Ghanaian man Bashiru Isaac was gunned down fatally in the ongoing xenophobic protests happening in South Africa. Bashiru, who is 40 years of age, had been living in South Africa for about 20 years. And based on information available, he's actually living in South Africa legally. So even though the protesters say they are targeting people who are undocumented immigrants in South Africa, Bashiru was a target of the protesters and he was gunned down in his tailoring shop, which he owns in Cape Town, South Africa. Cape Town is supposed to be one of the safest places in South Africa because recently it was voted, I think, the most beautiful city in the world. It's a huge tourism town for South Africa. A lot of white people from around the world go to Cape Town. But of course, Cape Town is not safe for Africans. Bashiru left behind three kids, the oldest of who is 10 years old. May he rest in peace and condolences to his family. The information reaching us is that he was gunned down on Monday, June 30th, which was the day that the xenophobic people in South Africa gave Africans to leave the country of South Africa. So you'll be wondering, why did he stay? For one, he's there legally. Two, the protesters say they are there after illegal immigrants. Three, he has family and has built a life there. He has a business over there where he employs people. Asking people to just leave a place that they are not committing any crime over there. Anyway, let me read what Ghana's foreign minister said about this. I saw this report earlier, right? And I even saw a video of what was said to be the unalive body of Bashiru, which at the time was an unnamed person. But I didn't want to talk about it until I had all the information I need. And now that Ghana's foreign minister have put out a statement, I believe it's the right time to feed you in on what is happening. So this is a statement by Honorable Kudeto Ablakwa, Ghana's foreign minister. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs have received with profound shock and sadness report of the fatal shooting of a Ghanaian national, Mr. Bashiru Isaac, aged 40 years in Khayelitsha. How do you pronounce that town? Khayelitsha, Cape Town, South Africa, on Monday, 30th June 2026, during the anti-immigrant demonstration linked to ongoing xenophobic attacks. The government of Ghana condemns in the stronger terms this senseless act of violence and the rising tide of xenophobia targeting African nationals, including Ghanaians in South Africa. The taking of any life is unacceptable, and those responsible must be brought to justice without delay. On the instruction of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ghana High Commission in Pretoria have formally registered Ghana's protest with the Department of International Relations and Cooperation and have subsequently filed a complaint with the South African Police Service. These steps were carried out after having confirmed the identity of the deceased and notified the bereaved family. At the request of the government of Ghana, an autopsy have since been performed on the body. Ghana demands from South African authorities a full, transparent, and expedited investigation leading to the arrest and prosecution of the perpetrators. We also reiterate our call on the South African authorities to ensure enhanced protection for all Ghanaian nationals in affected communities. The ministry, through its High Commission in Pretoria, have formally registered Ghana's protest to the South African authorities and have reiterated our expectation that South Africa, in line with its international obligation, will guarantee the safety, dignity, and right of all foreign nationals on its territory, including Ghanaians. And he went on to give more information. But here's the thing though. Leading up to June 30th, when African nationals were asked to leave South Africa, about 25,000 African nationals have been repatriated from South Africa, including about 900 Ghanaians. By the stands now, there are about over 2 million foreigners who live in South Africa. Less than 4% of the population of South Africa is foreigners. And for context, that is not a huge number. Other countries in Africa have higher foreigners living there. So the thing that South Africans like to say that everybody in Africa wants to move to South Africa is based on facts, not true. Say Ivory Coast, for example, about 10%, almost 10% of their population is foreigners. Almost every country in Africa have between 3 to 5% on average as of their population being foreigners. So South Africa does not have an immigration problem that is different from the rest of Africa. Most countries in the world have every country in the world really have foreigners living there. What is happening in South Africa is what I like to call the magic of racism. So, the government of South Africa is failing its people. The historical wound of apartheid is staying with the people of South Africa, and so they have taken to cutting people who did nothing to them. The expression is they have taken to bleeding on people who didn't cut them. That is what is happening in South Africa. They are bleeding on people who didn't cut them. First, they keep moving the goalpost. First, it was that they were taking the job of South Africans. And when evidence came out that most foreigners, especially, let me stick to Ghanaians, Ghanaians in South Africa mostly work in fashion and hairdressing. They open tailoring shops and hairdressing shops, and they actually employ South Africans to work for them. And the South Africans who work for these Ghanaians actually are breadwinners for their families. When that evidence came out, they moved the goalposts from taking their job to then they should hand over their businesses to the South Africans and go back to their countries and do that. And when they realized the foolishness of that argument, because some people who actually do business with in the fashion said, well, the issue is that Ghanaians actually come here and they train South Africans. And actually, they are doing a job that they have the skill set for. Then they are like, yeah, if they go, we are going to let. Every day they keep moving the goalposts. Just yesterday, they were talking about the fact that Africans who live in South Africa sell drugs to South Africans, and the South Africans take the drug, and the Nigerians and co who live in South Africa don't do drugs. Have bad news for you. Everybody does drug. It doesn't matter whether they are Nigerians living in South Africa, Nigerians living in Nigeria. I wish drugs wasn't a problem in the world, but it is. None of the issues these xenophobic people are blaming on foreigners in South Africa is actually an issue that is really, really connected to just foreigners, really. They are just, like I said, bleeding on people who didn't cut them. And now, this is the first reported casualty of a Ghanaian in relation to the xenophobic attacks in South Africa. I made a video which I posted earlier today about how these protests have been going on since May 2008. And in May 2008, 62 people were killed in the protest. And almost every year there is another protest where several people will be killed, and then they'll move on with their lives, come back, do another set of protests, kill people, move on. It's crazy. So several African nationals have been killed in South Africa in relation to this. This is the first time a Ghanaian has been involved. And based on reports that the media has, this Ghanaian has a business in Cape Town, like I said, a tailoring business, and he went to open his shop after the March for March protest had happened. And when he went to his shop, the thugs who are believed to be connected to what I'm saying is media report, right? Of course, the minister is not going to give you these details. And these thugs went into his shop and shot him in his shop. It is likely to be a targeted attack because they know that he's a foreigner. Like I said, this is a targeted attack, Afrophobia of Africans living in South Africa. Cape Town has one of the biggest white population in South Africa. I'm yet to see any white person who is a foreigner in South Africa being killed. And they keep saying this because they are targeting undocumented immigrants. This is somebody who has been living there legally. Why do you hate yourself, you black South African? Why do you hate yourself? You're a black man. Why do you hate yourself? So let me just say this before I go away. I've been trying to hold myself. The last 48 hours have been very, very bad for me. Maybe 72 hours. The flooding happening in West Africa has been bad, taking lives. Not a big deal, but the World Cup, the trashing of Africans, and now this. It's bad, bad, bad. But we move. And speaking of the World Cup, I was sad that I had to root against South Africa in the World Cup because I grew up loving South Africa. My dad became a born-again Christian when my mom was pregnant with me. So by the time I started living with my dad when I was 7 years old, my dad was no longer listening to secular music. So he only had cassettes and CD of gospel and Christian music, except one cassette of, you may know him, Lucky Dube, the South African reggae musician, the Prisoner album. My mom, when I was living with her when I was a kid, till whenever I visited her when I started living with my dad, also listened to a lot of Lucky Dube, and she had the CD for Sarafina, the film. And my mom and my dad always raised me to be with a huge love for Africa and blackness. When I was growing up in Ghana, race wasn't a thing in Ghana because we are all black. Race is a thing in societies where the system is structured based on a racial hierarchy. So race is not a thing in Ghana. So when I was growing up, race was not a thing in Ghana, but my dad was always pointing out to me black people around the world who are doing great things. Sometimes they don't necessarily have to be doing positive things. It can be Condoleezza Rice. It can be Clarence Thomas. It can be Bill Clinton's lawyer who defended him when he had to do the Monica Lewinsky thing. I didn't know who his lawyer was. My dad actually mentioned it to me that when Bill Clinton in the 90s had a black lawyer because white people were scared to take his case. And my dad was always telling me that whenever the world is in a dire state and somebody has to take the fall for the world, it's always a black person. But there's something my dad said to me which have built, I don't know how I'm going on this tangent, but maybe somebody needs to hear this. There was something my dad said to me which has built more than anything my confidence. I used to like basketball, and I still love basketball. But in Ghana, everybody loves football. So basketball wasn't on TV as much. So the way I watched or enjoyed basketball was reading about it. So I used to buy a lot of material, magazines, and books on basketball. So I had a book called Hang Time, which was a memoir, or yeah, a memoir on the life of Michael Jordan. His first year, the first year he won a ring, that was what the book was about. And it was written by a white journalist. And on the cover of the book, Michael Jordan was standing behind a white journalist with his arm on the white journalist like that because he's taller than him, right? And my dad saw the book, I bought it myself, and he was like, "Who is that person standing with Michael Jordan?" And I said, "He wrote the book." And my dad was like, "Is that his coach or something?" I'm like, "Nah, he's just a journalist who asked Michael Jordan if he can write his biography." And Michael Jordan said yes, so he did it. And then my dad asked me, "Is he the first journalist to be friends with Michael Jordan?" I'm like, "No. He's actually not even friends with Michael Jordan." I shared the story of the author with my dad because he was in the book. And then my dad was like, "Why was he the one who wrote the book?" I'm like, "I don't know." And my dad was like, "Because he asked." So there are black journalists, my dad told me that, in America who have written a book about Michael Jordan, but they did not do it because most likely they did not ask. This white person wrote a book about arguably one of the greatest black athletes of all time because he asked. So always ask if you want something. And that has been my mentality. You ask. If they say yes, cool. If they say no, we move. Right? And like I said, I don't know why I'm sharing this story in this particular video, but I thought it's important that we talk about blackness in this video. There's a lot of things happening in the last 48 hours that is making Africans feel psychologically attacked. Some of it has to do with the World Cup, the way the African countries all lose the games within the last 15 minutes. It's like they lose focus the last 15 minutes. And some people are saying it's a inferiority complex. I think it's a matter of mediocrity. But, and I've seen a lot of Africans express emotions that I feel is dangerous for their psychological development. And with this thing happening in South Africa, with the xenophobic attack on other Africans, we Africans and black people need to remember this. They attack you because there is something planted in you. Remember this. All right? You have something in you that the world, that the world wants to destroy, because if the world allow you to grow it, you take over. In the midst of all the negative things happening right now, remember who you are. Remember who you are. You're a great parent. Bro, I just wanted to, I don't know, I'm really feeling a lot of emotions right now. I don't like being too emotional on my channel, but sometimes I just have to get it out. All right. Condolences to the family of Bashiru Isaac. And I'll keep you updated if anything happens. And stay safe. Subscribe to my channel.